Falcon and the Winter Soldier is coming to an end. Charlotte Flair has got some problems in WWE. Will Ospreay looks to cement his legacy. And we got some interesting stuff coming up. Some news about Mass Effect Legendary Edition. This is the Rantin Review Podcast. What's going on, you sexy bitches? Welcome back to the Rantin Review Podcast. We are going to be talking today about a bunch of stuff in entertainment, TV shows, video games, wrestling, and all that good stuff. But before we get to that, I want to remind you guys that my good friend, Courtney Bell, has yogacurrent.com. Now, I know some people don't like yoga, but it is getting warm outside. You're going to have to be wearing less clothes, especially you ladies out there. You know, some of you guys, want to spruce up for all those wonderful dresses that you're wearing during the spring and the summertime. Some of us guys, might want to wear some tank tops, might want to wear some shorts, might want to wear some shirts with your gut not hanging out over top of your belt line. Well, in order to get to that, Courtney's got a bunch of videos for you guys to do, very short sessions, targeted to specific areas of your body. She's a really awesome person too, by the way. I've known her for a while. Amazing young lady. So definitely check her out at her website. She does have a Patreon, which you can get more exclusive videos. She'll even make a yoga training session specifically for you, depending on the tier that you're on. So check her out, YOGACURRENT, yogacurrent.com, and sign up today with her Patreon and help the lady out because she's amazing. On to the news this week. So we got... WrestleMania happened last week, and we've talked about WrestleMania a lot, but we got some WWE news, but I did want to start off with some New Japan news. So a lot of people have noticed that Kota Ibushi has not been around since he lost the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. We have to call it that now. Since he lost the title to Will Ospreay back at Sakura Genesis, and seen Kota Ibushi, ain't heard a peep out of him. So what's come out a couple days ago is that a lot of this, and I kind of suspected this, some people thought that he's going to be he may be, I doubt it though, but he would show up for the Kenny Omega match against Rich Swann, where they're having the AEW Championship against the Impact Championship coming up this week. A lot of people suspected that Ibushi might show up for that. I don't think so. I think the legitimate thing that's happened is that Ibushi, if you remember, the reports were that he injured his foot pretty badly way back at Wrestle Kingdom in that match with Jay White. And he's wrestled through it, through all of January, through all of February, through all of March, up until the Sakura Genesis show. We saw it, you noticed it, that he was kind of hampered in his movements. They worked the match a different way, because both him and Ospreay were pretty banged up by the time they got to that match. So it is noted that for storyline purposes, and it just makes sense to write him off for a tour, let him heal up, let him heal his foot up, get back in his shape. I do expect that we're going to see Ibushi back before summer hits, before the end of June. Ibushi will probably be back in New Japan, but it's good. And this is something that, again, we brought this up before. Ospreay's banged up, Shingo's banged up, Okada's banged up, Naito's banged up. A lot of these guys have some pretty bad injuries going on right now, so allowing some of them to take time off and to heal up and then to come back. And I've always been an advocate of that. I think like wrestlers should get vacations. Like, you keep everybody on the show for your biggest shows of the year, with New Japan to be Wrestle Kingdom, AEW, I guess, would be the All Out show, for Impact to be Slammiversary, for, it depends on the WWE's obviously WrestleMania stuff. Anyway, I've always been an advocate of, like, hey, take a guy off if he's been wrestling for 12 months hard. Give him a month off, write him off the show for a little bit, and have him come back, and then write another guy off the show, and let these guys have some vacation time, heal up, see their families, live their life, and just enjoy a month off, and then come back to work. I always wondered how crazy that is that these guys just go for years and years and years nonstop, especially the old days. The old days when you were on the road 280 days out of the 365 a year, probably even some of them even 300 days out of the year they were on the road. I mean, it's the wear and tear on your body is bad, and we've seen the effects of that over time. So hopefully Ibushi gets better and we will see him back soon. Tonga Loa, they are trying to really spruce up this feud with the Dangerous Tekkers and Gorillas of Destiny in New Japan for the tag titles, which I like this wrinkle. So on one of the recent Road to shows during one of the multi-man tags, Loa pinned Zack Sabre Jr. and he told after the match, ZSJ is like, look, they got this match coming up at Wrestling Dontaku. He'll be wrestling against ZSJ. Tama Tonga is going to be going in the Bird Claw match against Taichi. And what's going to happen is that Tonga Loa says if Zack Sabre Jr. can beat him one-on-one, clean, that the Guerrillas of Destiny will give the Dangerous Tekkers another shot at the tag team titles. However, if Zack Sabre Jr. does not win his match with Tonga Loa, which Loa then, I guess he channeled Chris Jericho. He's like, don't you ever challenge again. So if Zack Sabre Jr. doesn't win this, now there's some stakes in this match now, which makes it a little bit more interesting. If Zack doesn't win this match against Loa, the Dangerous Tekkers can't challenge the Guerrillas of Destiny for the tag titles ever again. So they're stretching it out, and this is a good way to stretch it out. Again, they're still having problems. New Japan has had problems with its tag team division for a very long time. I think that really we're hoping that this pandemic stuff will kind of be cleared up, because you see the future where they want to go with it. I think that part of the partnership with AEW is to get the Guerrillas of Destiny against FTR, against obviously Gallows and Anderson, against the Young Bucks. They want those tag matches brought into New Japan. They're kind of outsourcing their tag division, which is nothing new for New Japan. They've outsourced a lot of their some of their divisions before. The junior division was outsourced for a while ago, a long time ago. So it's nothing new, but I like this wrinkle to the match. We'll see what happens at Wrestling Dontaku. I was going to have a guest on this week to talk about the show, but I think next week we'll try to have Jana Jerusalem on as a preview for some of these upcoming New Japan shows when I can get our schedule synced up. So we'll be talking about New Japan a lot in a future podcast. Probably an extra edition of the podcast that'll be available for most people, and then we'll have an additional preview of Wrestling Otaku on the Patreon page. Speaking of Patreons, before I forget about this, let me give a big shout out to Ty, who's a brand new Patreon. Thank you very much for signing up. If you guys want to hop on the Patreon, we just did a old school watch along for the classic 1991 match of the year match with Sting and Lex Luger against the Steiner brothers at the very first Super Brawl from WCW. Very interesting to watch that match and compare it to today's wrestling, and to think about how many old timers complain about the way wrestling is today, and to look at a match like that from 1991 that set the template for what a lot of the matches are today. And that match was match of the year in 1991. So, I wonder why all these matches are the way they are now. Well, you blame the Steiners, Luger, and Sting for that. So there you go. But definitely check out the Patreon. It's patreon.com/RasslinRantin, RasslinRantin. If you want to sign up for one of the tiers, I mean, we got tiers as low as $1 up to $5. So if you want to help out the channel and get some of that extra content, definitely check that out. One last thing, speaking of legacy and how wrestling has changed today, one of the guys that a lot of people criticize is Will Ospreay, who is the current IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. Now, Ospreay, recently to Tokyo Sports, had an interview, and it looks like he's kind of overlooking Shingo. And this is all kind of kayfabe shoot work. And this is why I love the way the Japanese press handles stuff, because they work in shoot with kayfabe in these interviews. So Ospreay went on to say, that he was looking forward to the Tokyo Dome show because the Wrestling Grand Slam shows are coming up, which are 2 stadium shows for New Japan. One of them will be at the Tokyo Dome. And Ospreay says he's looking forward to facing Okada in the Tokyo Dome in the main event. And he's quoted as saying, "I'm not downplaying Takagi. It's going to be a fierce match, and more fierce than he imagined, but it does make a lot of sense to overcome it and then to wrestle Okada at the Dome." He lost at the Tokyo Dome in January this year, but next time he will win, which is a good story there. That you remember at the Tokyo Dome, it wasn't as great a match as a lot of us thought it might have been, but Okada did beat Will Ospreay in that clean sweep of the United Kingdom at Wrestle Kingdom. So this is going to be, that's why, and you kind of figured that given that the United Empire lost all their matches at Wrestle Kingdom, that for most of the rest of the year they were destined for some big stuff. And I'm fully expecting a lot of bigger things to come up for the United Empire in the future, especially now they got Hanari on there. Hanari's probably going to be going for the Never title at some point. I can see, I can probably see the Great Okan and Jeff Cobb going for the tag titles. That's a vicious team to go after, or any combination of those guys. But Ospreay also says that the main reason he's looking at this is to cement his legacy as one of the greatest gaijins ever in Japanese wrestling. And the last gaijin to win a main event at the Tokyo Dome was Brock Lesnar, of all people. And Ospreay wants his legacy to eclipse Lesnar's, which I don't think will be too hard because of the whole controversy with Lesnar holding the IWGP Championship hostage because he didn't want to give it back to them, and that's a whole other story a lot of people know about. Maybe I'll get into it at some point in the future. But if Ospreay does face Okada at the Dome and he does win a title defense against Kazuchika Okada at the Tokyo Dome, it will put him above, especially the most two recent famous gaijins, or three. Prince Devitt, who never won a main event at the Tokyo Dome, never was in one. AJ Styles, who never won a main event at the Tokyo Dome, never was in one. And his semi-main event with Shinsuke Nakamura, he lost on their way out of the company. And of course, Kenny Omega, I think he wrestled two Wrestle Kingdom main events. I don't count the Jericho one as a semi-main. It didn't close the show, so it's not a main event. I go by that rule. These made up rules for wrestling. But technically you can say that Kenny won that match with Jericho, so he won a main event, quote unquote. But as far as the closing match on the show, Kenny Omega did not win against Tanahashi, and he did not win against Okada. So Will Ospreay wants to have, and it's always interesting that they always find these little wrinkles to fight for, these little monumental moments that, I'm going to wrestle and I'm going to face off against I'm going to face off against Okada in the main event and become the first gaijin since Brock Lesnar to win a main event at the Tokyo Dome. I mean, hey, you got to have goals, man. But it'll be an interesting goal. I mean, and when I read this, it did strike me that, Will Ospreay, his name is now up there with AJ Styles, with Kenny Omega, with Brock Lesnar, with Finn Balor, Prince Devitt, with a lot of these gaijins who have reached the top. And, we always thought Ospreay was going to get there at some point in time, but it now is the time. And it's all up to him and his performances to see how well he does. So that's that. Now, moving on over to WWE. Here's a weird thing about WWE. When I talk about New Japan news, it's usually about what the wrestlers say, which has a lot more to do with their storylines. And, if it's any backstage stuff, it's usually injury stuff. With WWE, it's all kinds of really ridiculous drama. So, the wrestler formerly known as Andrade Cien Almas was on an interview this week. This past week. And he talked a lot about WWE. And one of the things he claimed was that Charlotte was pulled from her title match at WrestleMania against Asuka because they thought that she was pregnant, which she wasn't. And she wasn't pregnant at all. And they pulled her from the match. She was supposed to challenge Asuka. Now, originally, you remember, they were doing this whole thing with Ric Flair and Lacey Evans, which they totally dropped because Lacey Evans got pregnant. So they dropped the whole thing with Charlotte and Lacey Evans, and were seemingly moving towards Charlotte and Asuka at Mania. And then, of course, that wound up being not Charlotte in the main event, which was great for Rhea Ripley, who's beat Asuka, became the women's champion. But you got to wonder what's going on with Charlotte. Then they brought Charlotte back the next night, and now, because you guys know I don't watch Raw every single week, but apparently now Charlotte has been pulled off again. She's working a suspension angle as of Monday night's Raw. So she's written off TV again. And Andrade is suspecting that a lot of this has to do with a lot of the other women having heat with her, quote unquote, backstage with Charlotte. And that management has a problem because of Andrade, of course, who recently left WWE. So they're giving her, she's getting it from both ends, poor Charlotte. So nobody really knows what's going on. Meltzer talked about it. I don't know. I don't see her leaving. I don't know when her contract's up. I haven't looked that up yet, but that would be kind of weird because Charlotte they've given her so much. She's like a 10-time women's champion, even though I don't remember any of those reigns. They're not memorable reigns, but she's been women's champion like 10 times or something crazy like that. They've been talking about Sasha Banks as being the best now, and they're pumping her up over Charlotte. So I don't know, something might be going on there. We'll have to keep our eyes on it, man. But that would be kind of cruddy if they decide to screw Charlotte over because she's with Andrade. And I can't imagine Ric Flair would be going with that either. Now, of course, the wishful thinking would be, I want to talk about it. A lot of people want to know, well, that would be kind of cool if Charlotte left WWE and went over to AEW, because then Ric Flair could also go over to AEW. So your women's division gets, I mean, that would be, if that happened, and I'm not going to say that it is, I'm going to speculate for a little bit. I'm going to indulge in this a little bit. If Charlotte did wind up going to AEW because of all this drama, whenever her contract is up, that would definitely be a big boost to AEW's women's division, because WWE has pumped Charlotte up, like I said, 10-time, whatever it is, 8, 9, 10-time WWE women's champion on SmackDown and Raw. You know, one of the most decorated women wrestlers in WWE's history will then be on AEW's roster. Again, this is me dreaming and speculating about it. It's not actually anything that I think is going to happen anytime soon, so don't get hot about it. But if that happened, you'd also probably have to think that Flair would go over, and then you would have Flair and Arn and Tully, along with MJF and Pinnacle, all over in AEW. And then, because the only thing that's missing from the whole Horseman revival thing that they're doing, unintended pun there, that's going on over in AEW right now with Pinnacle, is the fact that Flair is not there. He's still with WWE, so he's the only piece missing from that whole thing. So I don't know. We'll see what happens in the future. Now, other things as far as women wrestlers in WWE is Io Shirai, who we all speculated will be heading up to the main roster, apparently is taking time off. Some nagging injuries, and there's been rumors, these are rumors again, that she's been complaining a bit about being in WWE, despite the fact they gave her like a 300-plus day title reign as NXT champion. She was one of the breakout stars in NXT. One of the things that when I would watch takeovers, I would look forward to an Io Shirai match, and she never disappointed. She got written off Tuesday night by saying she was going to take some time off, and then Valkyrie, Johnny Mundo, Impact, Nitro, whatever the hell he is now, Johnny, whatever, his actual real life main squeeze partner, Valkyrie, who we've been waiting for a long time to see if she's coming to WWE. She did announce a couple weeks ago she's going to be heading to NXT. This was her debut, and she said she'd pick up the slack for Io Shirai when Io Shirai left. Now, this would kind of imply that eventually Valkyrie and Io Shirai would have a match, but it appears that Shirai is going to take time off. Now, keep this in mind. The rumor is also that Io Shirai has apparently said, which is really baffling with the whole Brie Priestley thing from a couple weeks ago, but that Io Shirai says that she got paid more in Stardom than she's getting paid in NXT, which I had suspected that WWE was paying more. But if Shirai is saying that she got paid more in Stardom, like, what the hell? And so I guess my speculation that Bea Priestley, the reason why she left Stardom and New Japan and that whole thing is that because, you get paid more going to NXT and being in the hot women's division they have over there, which is about as good, if not as good as Stardom's. But apparently that might not be the case. Now, who knows? I mean, Bea Priestley might have a better contract if she, in fact, is going to WWE. But I just found that to be kind of weird. And we also have to remember, too, Io Shirai, her partner is Evil in New Japan. And this pandemic cannot have been good for their relationship because he's in Japan and she's in the States. So there you go. So I don't know. The future seems to be kind of suspect for Io Shirai, which this is two major women's talents in WWE who are, their futures are kind of questionable with the company, which is really surprising to me because WWE's women's division, both on the main roster, or well, at least the main event scene, women's scene on the main roster, and NXT's women's division are some of the best in the world. So I don't know. The last bit of WWE news, speaking of NXT, current NXT champion Karrion Kross apparently said he wanted to have a match with John Cena, who may or may not be retiring. At some point in time, John Cena is going to have to come back and have a retirement match or one last run or something like that. Kross threw his name in there, said he hoped that Cena would come back full time. He wanted to wrestle Cena. And then Cena, being Cena, on his Instagram, just posted a picture of Karrion Kross. So it looks like Cena's at least interested. I think Karrion Kross is going to have to be in WWE a little bit longer for WWE to give him that match. But, Cena's, for all the knocks against Cena, and Cena still he's not anywhere near being one of the best wrestlers of all time as far as his in-ring work. But as far as being a star, Cena is definitely one of the best stars that WWE has ever had. And one of the things I always did like about Cena is the fact that he would go out of his way to kind of try to pump up younger stars. And he went out of his way to go have that feud with Kevin Owens and to have a few of AJ Styles and to try to get some of those and Sami Zayn and try to, you know, that whole US challenge thing he did back several years ago. I always did appreciate that. And Rusev too. I always appreciated that about Cena. And it wouldn't surprise me if Cena's like, hey, you know, let's do this. Because I think one thing you can say for Cena is that he did see the need, even though he also kind of contributed to holding a lot of guys down. Let's not go into the Nexus SummerSlam 2010 issue, but he may have learned from that. Was 11 years ago. He learned from that, I guess. And he's like, yeah, I realize it's important to get other stars up there. I think he should have realized that a long time ago. It was important for WWE to have other people for him to wrestle. For him just not to be head and shoulders above everybody else, except for The Undertaker and Brock Lesnar, who were rarely ever on the show. But hey, you know, I think a Cena coming back against Karrion Kross, if they did that on NXT, poof, that'd be that would be something that I would like to see. If they did that on NXT instead of the main roster, I don't think they'd do it. But that would be pretty cool if Cena came back for one match against Karrion Kross on NXT. Talk about boosting the numbers for NXT. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, that would have been something if they were still on a Wednesday Night War. That might have been a good idea then. Moving over to entertainment news, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which has... Look, that show had a tough act to follow with WandaVision, because WandaVision was really damn good. But much like WandaVision, it took the first couple of episodes to kind of get going. Falcon and the Winter Soldier is the same way. But at this point in time, man, the last episodes 3, 4, and 5 of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier have been absolutely knockout fantastic. And we're leading now to the season finale. And there's lots of speculation going on about what's going to happen on the season finale. And one thing I did want to touch on, which I'll probably touch on when I review the season finale on YouTube, but all of these YouTubers, you know, I don't pull any punches when I see things that are ridiculous and silly, because I don't give a crap, because this is a hobby, not my job. But some of these YouTubers, man, they're almost as bad as some of the wrestling YouTubers talking about some of these Marvel movies. There's a couple of them in particular. I'm not going to mention names, because most of you probably know what I'm talking about anyway. But just have been going on and on and on for the last 6 weeks about Thunderbolt Ross and the Thunderbolts. Yes, there's going to be a Thunderbolt show on Disney Plus eventually for Marvel. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Thunderbolts is kind of like sort of, I won't say like Suicide Squad, but the concept is kind of the same. It's a team of villains, essentially. Or tweeners, to use a wrestling term. And it'll probably involve U.S. Agent, who is the Johnny Walker character who was playing the false Captain America on Falcon and the Winter Soldier. They just introduced Julia Louis-Dreyfus as Madame Hydra. So she's probably going to be involved with that too. So again, they're planting the seeds for it, but there's all these people like, I've seen their reviews, and they spend like all this time for weeks now talking about Thunderbolt Ross. We are in the season finale now. I see no signs that Thunderbolt Ross is going to have any impact or be of any importance to the show whatsoever. He may appear in a post-credit scene for 5 seconds, but for them in the season finale to introduce a new character like that, when they've got all of these, they've got like a bunch of plot threads to tie up with the Flag Smashers, what's happening at that whole conference that they're holding that they're about to attack, Bucky and what he's going to do. Sam just got the shield. He just got the new outfit from Wakanda. So there's all, and what's going on with Sharon Carter, what's going on with the Power Broker, and what's going on with Johnny Walker. Now he's making his own shield. He's going to go in. He's all freaking crazy with the super soldier serum. So there's all of that they got to tie up. There is no room to put Thunderbolt Ross into the story outside of a 5-second cameo or a 5-second post-credit scene. So the reason why I'm mentioning this is because this is the whole Snoke issue from The Last Jedi and Star Wars. This is the whole Doctor Strange Mephisto thing from WandaVision. You get these people, and I've been guilty, and look, I've been guilty of it too. I did it with WandaVision, and I did it mainly because I was like, oh yeah, well, that might make sense. But I didn't spend a lot of time on it. But there are some of these people who go on and on about, I mean, like WandaVision, let's take WandaVision. Doctor Strange did not show up at all in WandaVision. But everybody kept talking about Doctor Strange through the entirety of that show's run. He was not in the show, nowhere to be found. He was casually mentioned at one point in the show. Mephisto was never mentioned in that show. There may have been an Easter egg here or there, but he wasn't in the show. Nightmare wasn't in the show. None of these people and these characters run up in the show. And then the problem with it is that some of the fans who watch these guys and girls and they speculate on this stuff for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I hate this in wrestling too. They speculate on all this stuff. And then when it doesn't happen, people get, oh, that sucked. It's like, no, it didn't suck. The show never ever said that they were going to do that. Some other person put that in your head because they kept talking about it every single week. And then when it didn't happen in the show because you're listening to this other person, then you think the show sucks or you're disappointed because so-and-so didn't show up in the show. It's speculating on things is fine. I do it all the time. That's part of the fun of watching wrestling and video games and movies and TVs is to speculate what might happen and based off of the source material, yada, yada, yada. And it's cool to speculate, but to constantly hammer it in over and over again. I saw one guy today had Thunderbolt Ross in the thumbnail of his video about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I'm like, that fucker might not even be in the show. It's like, why do you keep pumping that out? The worst one was Snoke. That's the worst one ever. Snoke will forever be the worst example of that because for 2 years, these people talked on and on about Snoke and what is he? Maybe he's the Emperor. Maybe he's Luke. Maybe he's Revan from the comic, from whatever fuck Revan's from. Maybe he's this person. Maybe he's from here. Maybe he's a reincarnated this or reincarnated that. And it turned out that Snoke was nothing. Now, a lot of that have to do with the fact that Rian Johnson was very, very, very poor at anticipating audience expectations in the Star Wars community in particular and what they expected. And he just decided he wasn't going to do it. So that partially is his fault. But at the same time, there's a lot of fans who speculated a bunch of stuff that the movies never said they were going to do. They didn't say anything about that. You made that up in your own head. And then you got disappointed when somebody else's imagination didn't jive with your imagination. So, I mean, that's what all this stuff is. So I always say speculate. Again, it's fine to speculate. It's fun to do it. We all enjoy it. And to guess in the fantasy book or to, ghost write stories or whatever. But at the end of the day, if what we imagine doesn't happen in the show, we're not writing the show. And the show doesn't suck because it didn't do what we conjured up in our head. And that's my only point about it. But besides that rant that I just went on wow, somebody's calling me. Wow. I guess that might be one of those YouTubers calling me right now going, why are you talking about me? But yeah, it's I wouldn't get too much on that stuff. But Falcon and the Winter Soldier, despite my ranting just now, great show. If you haven't checked it out, I know some of you guys haven't because there's a lot of you guys that don't watch anything but wrestling. I know that listen to my show, but that is definitely one that you guys should check out. Falcon and the Winter Soldier on many different levels is a great show. If you haven't seen it, definitely go watch it. Last little bit I wanted to talk about is Mass Effect Legendary Edition. It's coming out. We got 20 some odd days. I will be live streaming it. I will be doing a walkthrough. Now, it's obviously not a blind walkthrough. I've played through Mass Effect probably God knows how many times now. I'm going to put it out to the community, and this is the news about this as far as my channel is concerned. I'm going to have some polls up as we get closer towards the release of the Legendary Edition, where I'm going to have you guys choose the sex of Shepard. The background is going to be basically the setup for my Shepard character, whether I may do... Now, I may keep the Paragon or Renegade. I might want to do that, but I'm going to do the Paragon and Renegade stuff. And we're gonna go through that. I might, and that's kind of the fun thing about games like this and Amanda Madon and Until Dawn is that, and I didn't even think about it when I started doing video game streaming, is that for games like this, I can ask you guys what you guys want to do in certain situations, and I can go based off of what you guys want to do. So I think for Mass Effect, for when I do my playthrough through the Legendary Edition, I'm going to have a lot of those decisions be made up to you guys. So stay tuned for that. It should be a lot of fun because it's going to take a while to go through all three games. I think I'll do Mass Effect 1, then take a break, then do 2, then take a break, and then do 3 and take a break. But we're going to probably, my goal is to play through that together for the audience. And if any of you are fans of Mass Effect, this should be a really fun experience. So stay tuned for that. I guess in probably about 2 weeks, I'm going to start putting up the polls, both on YouTube and on Facebook and on my Patreon page and on Twitter. and take them all together and see what, and on my mailing list, by the way, if you aren't on my mailing list, it's subscribepage.com/wrestlingrantin, which gives you all the updates of all the stuff that I do every single week. But I will be having those surveys, and we will be guiding Shepard in a community fashion to see what Shepard is going to, what kind of Shepard we're going to wind up with once the Reapers and the Star Child ask us that stupid ass question at the end of the game to make the 3 decisions. I don't know. I mean, some of it I want to be selfish with, though, because some of it I want to do, and some of the things I don't want to do because I know it can screw up how the game plays out. So some I might not ask, but there are going to be times that I'm going to ask some critical questions of you guys and be like, look, did we kill Rex or not? It's like, do we want to kill Rex? I don't think I've ever killed Rex in a playthrough. So I might ask you guys of that. You know, is it going to be Caden, the boring? Are we gonna let Caden die, the boring sidekick, vanilla, you know, guy on our team, or are we going to let space racist Ashley and her poetry and her reciting poetry? We're gonna let her die? Which one are we gonna do? Which I remember when that first happened, when I played that game, and I remember the whole gaming community at that time was all like going crazy. Like, it was such a big deal. Like, oh, you have to choose which one of them dies. And it was like 10 years ago, it was a super huge deal. Not so much anymore. But yeah, it's gonna be fun. I'm really looking forward. If you can't tell, really looking forward to doing Mass Effect Legendary Edition on the YouTube channel. But that is it for this week's podcast here on the Rantin Review. Hopefully you guys, whether you like wrestling, TV, video games, whatever, I covered something that you have an interest in, and hopefully you'll learn about something new. Also, don't forget, I do have Wrestling with Finance, which is my personal finance channel. You guys should really get up on money these days. The money situation right now in the world, things are changing, and you kind of might be a good time to get ahead of the curve on some of this stuff, because there's a lot of money to be made. And if you're on the head of the curve, you're going to be somebody who's going to be, I mean, it's a difference between being well off and then being in the struggle. And you really don't want to be in the struggle. I mean, we all want to kind of prosper. So I do those videos mainly to help other people learn the things that I've learned that have helped me out. So if you want to check out Wrestling with Finance, I definitely appreciate it. But until next week, I will see you guys here for more news and commentary on the Rantin Review podcast. Behave yourselves, but not too much.